So the Athletic in Kansas City decided to release some information. Okay, they decided to compare Patrick Mahomes to Troy Aikman. And essentially the main thing that they pointed out was already Patrick Mahomes in, his third year and only second full season as starting quarterback, has already thrown 60 touchdown passes, whereas Troy Aikman for a career, if I remember correctly, threw 165. And then, of course, Troy Aikman clapped back and he said, talk to me when he's won 33% of my Super Bowls, which, I mean, you can't hate him. Here's my thing, though, man, because, look, I don't think Troy Aikman would have really said anything because, as we know, Troy Aikman's not really all that active on Twitter, right? He did have something to say to Doug Gottlieb when he went in on Andrew Luck when he retired and called it the most millennial thing he had ever seen. And Troy Aikman went after him strong, right? But even then, Troy Aikman was like, dude, it's nothing personal. We're friends. I just didn't like what he had to say about Andrew Luck's retirement. And nobody understands more than Troy Aikman all of these things. Because, number one, Troy Aikman was billed as a game-managing quarterback, so he hates that term with a passion, right? With all the talent that was around him, that's what people called him. All he had to do was manage the football game, right? Then, of course, a guy who had all the concussions that he did later on in his career and decided to step away would also know what it's like to say, you know what, I've got to do what's best for my health, for my family, for my future, for later on. Troy Aikman would understand that better than anybody, right? So that's why, and I get where he's coming from. Look, like I've been critical of Troy Aikman, like many have, because of the team that was around him. And I think that in some ways it is unfair because we will never really know who Troy Aikman could have been without having Alvin Harper, Michael Irvin, Jay Novacek, Daryl the Moose Johnston, Emmitt Smith, a badass offensive line, a phenomenal defense, great special teams even. Jimmy Johnson, one of the best coaches of all time. He was successful at the collegiate and NFL level. We'll never really know. Matter of fact, that team was so good that Troy Aikman, during, that deal they do on NFL, A Football Life, Troy Aikman said that Barry Switzer was not respected and he wasn't the same type of coach that Jimmy Johnson was, and it was really all on Aikman to get everybody going. And with all the animosity that was happening, that team was still so good that they still won a Super Bowl based off of the talent level that they had alone. So it's very difficult to go against anybody who may say that Troy Aikman was a little overrated, and that includes myself. But I do, however, understand where he's coming from because the rings do talk. Now, of course, a lot of people are going to point out the same old, same old. They're going to go, well, Dan Marino never got a ring, and he was better than Aikman. People may pull out the name Fran Tarkenton. People may say, well, Trent Dilfer got a ring. Brad Johnson got a ring. And look, I'm right there with you. Troy Aikman clapped back, not because of the stat. Troy Aikman didn't clap back simply because he was having a bad day and feel like, you know what, I'm just going to go ahead and go right after these guys. I think it's the approach that they had because they were, if you listen to the clip, it's about a 40-second clip. They're just yucking it up and laughing and having a good time and basically making fun of Troy Aikman, I think, is what he felt like, just listening to that 40-second clip. Now, here's the thing. We don't know the rest of that conversation. We don't know what happened before. We don't know after. We don't know if somebody maybe pulled that stat up and went, oh, man, that's crazy. And just had a good chuckle about it, like, man, that's insane, and then went on to compliment Troy Aikman. Or if beforehand they were saying, Aikman was good, he was a team leader, et cetera, et cetera. We don't know those things. What we do know is in the context of the 38 seconds that we have of the clip, they were to probably Troy Aikman being very disrespectful. And that is where I, as a journalist, have taken such a different approach than what I used to. I used to dig at guys. I used to take mass shots, and after a while, I just decided, you know what, this isn't journalism, for one. This isn't me being impartial, for two. And this isn't even me being a reporter. This is me being basically an asshat and going after guys that have more skill level than most of us who are talking about it will ever have. And it's not that I can't be critical. It's not that I can't critique. It's not that I can't second guess. It's not that I can't eyeball a talent and go, I don't really see it with this guy, or with another guy go, you know what, I really do see it. It's not that I'm not going to always be right. I'm not always going to be wrong. It's never going to be any of those things. But I think that it's the approach that was taken to it that is what got under Troy Aikman's skin, and deservedly so. Look, the bullshit that goes on right now in sports journalism has gotten beyond anything that we could ever really – I don't think we ever saw it coming. People in my industry, because you have to understand, I did study mass communications with an emphasis on sports analysis. And there was a time in my industry when news syndications like Extra and some of the others were laughed at. They were scoffed at. And then eventually everybody became that. And we put ourselves in a very difficult situation because we traded in fact for opinion. Because, see, sometimes it just doesn't matter what the fact is. Only our opinion matters. Now, I understand that they presented facts, is what The Athletic did. They presented a fact. Here's a fact. Troy Aikman, for his career, threw 165 touchdown passes. Patrick Mahomes, for his career, threw 60. But let's talk about some other facts. That the Dallas Cowboys were a run-first football team. And why wouldn't you be when you have that fullback, running back combo in Johnston and Smith? Why would you risk dropping back your quarterback every single play and risking injury? Why wouldn't you have a balanced offense? Why wouldn't you control the clock? Why wouldn't you do those things? The Kansas City Chiefs are not a run-first offense. Even when Kareem Hunt was still there with Kansas City, they were not a run-first offense when Patrick Mahomes took the reins. This is a pass-first offense. That's what they do. They light it up, and they've got playmakers all over the field. Look, Tyreek Hill's supposed to be coming back soon. You've got Sammy Watkins. You've got Travis Kelce. You've got other players now that are starting to emerge for this football team. I'm not saying that Patrick Mahomes isn't a good quarterback, and he can damn sure light it up all over the place. There are literally no questions about that whatsoever. What I am saying to you is we're talking about two different styles and two different eras of two different types of quarterbacks. So to compare the two are really apples to oranges. A better comparison would honestly be Jared Goff to Troy Aikman. That would be the direction that I would go, because we're talking about two similar offenses. Obviously what they're doing out in LA is a little more West Coasty, but what they're doing with the running game and how they're using it and the pass game and all those types of things are very similar. And it's all predicated upon the ability to run the football first. Gurley's numbers haven't been exceptional this year, no. But the fact of the matter is that football teams, as of the moment, still regard him as a threat. And so when they run play action, it makes life a lot easier on Jared Goff. And in the same way that I've been critical of Troy Aikman, I have been critical of Jared Goff, believing, for the moment still, regardless of that huge payday that he just got, I still think that without the run game, I don't really know who he is. Is he good enough to guide a team to a victory? They got to a Super Bowl last season. Regardless of how you feel about how they got there, they got there. And then when you look at the Super Bowl, though, how well did Jared Goff perform? Yes, very young. However, ask Dan Marino about getting back to a Super Bowl. And even then, it was almost case in point. With no Todd Gurley, Jared Goff may not be able to carry this team on his own. May not. But see, presentation is completely different. I'm not yucking it up. I'm not going completely in on him. And again, I used to do those things. I used to yell, hoot, and holler, and I thought it made me sound impressive when really all it was just nervous energy. Look, everybody's got a style. Everybody's got a shtick. This is not how I get down. And I've been known to crack every now and again still, but really when I do it, though, it's just in banner. It's in banner. Like I did a thing last season when for the spring football game, Central Florida decided to unveil themselves as the national champions because they finished undefeated. And if I remember correctly, they were the only undefeated team in all of college football. And so what I did was took a little jab. You know, I did a little thing between The Rock and Chris Jericho. But then I went on to say, hey, man, I'm just having some fun. And I also made mention several times, and I still believe that Central Florida should have had a shot in the college football playoff. So that's the bottom line to that. I understand where Aikman's coming from. I think sometimes we as journalists have a tendency to go too far. It's all about presentation and, again, contrast to comparison. I understand that you're in Kansas City. I understand Mahomes is your guy. And so being in this line of work, I know what it is when they ask you to basically be a homer. I get all that, right? But by the same token, there is a level of going too far. These are the things that Kevin Durant and James Harden and a host of other athletes have been talking about over the years. And I think it was just one of those situations where if the clip does stand true to time, maybe things are taken a little too far. Guys, I am Drew Duncan, host of the Full Court Press. Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram is all at Drew Duncan83. You can find me on YouTube. Simply look for Drew Duncan. The Full Court Press is on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and YouTube as well. And do not forget that you can find us wherever you listen to podcasts. Simply take a device to play the Full Court Press by Drew Duncan. And as always, don't you dare